Council, are we ready to resume our proceedings? You can get the witness.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. The witness is being brought in by the usher. Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Sanneh. Welcome back.
Thank you.
I hope you had a good break.
Yes, I had some rest.
For this session, we will continue for an hour before we break for lunch. I would just like to remind you that you're still under oath. If I can just ask you to draw the mic closer to you so that we can hear you. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So prior to the break, we were talking about the first incident of your victimization. That is the incident at the Denton Bridge on 22nd September 1996. You told us about the beatings that you and your group endured at Denton Bridge and again at Atlantic Hotel. And then thereafter you were arrested 2 days later.
Yes.
Arrested and detained at the National Intelligence Agency for about 18 days.
Yes.
You told us about the conditions of detention at the time. You told us that you weren't informed of the reasons for your arrest.
Yes.
You told us that even your brother who came to look for you, Mr. Sanneh, was then detained by the order of Mr. Fode Barry of the NIA.
Yes.
And during that 18-day period, you told us that you did not receive any medical treatment for your injuries. During those 18 days, were you allowed to take a shower?
Yes, we were allowed in the evenings, one after the other, to go to the bathroom and take a shower, yes.
Were you provided with a change of clothing during those 18 days?
No, we were not.
So you wore the same clothing
We wore
throughout?
the same clothes over and over.
During that 18-day period, did anything happen to you?
Apart from the lack of visits, you are not allowed access to any lawyer, you are not allowed access to your family. The poor nutrition, the food, the diet they had given, they just kept me in the dark. They did not tell me why they arrested me. They did not tell me why they were putting me in the cell. So it's later I learned that as treasurer, they thought by arresting me and keeping me away during the elections period, they would starve UDP of their campaign funds. That's later what I learned. But even then, it didn't make sense, because if it was a bank account, you had so many signatories, not just the treasurer. So, but that's the lesson that I learned from outside.
And out of your group, that is the individuals who were at Denton Bridge, were you the only one that was detained at the NIA during that period?
Yes, I was the only one detained, as far as I know, yes.
Can you tell us what led to your release after 18 days of detention?
On the last day, they took me out to their front office. They said, now we are letting you go, but we don't want you to repeat your ordeal to anybody. If you do, we will come for you. You know, so they threatened me, and that's the thing. So they gave me back my glasses and the stuff that they took from me at the beginning, and allowed me to leave.
Do you recall who threatened you and told you not to mention your ordeal to anyone?
Today I wouldn't be able to, I don't know the operatives by name. These are just MIA operatives there. And I wouldn't know the names. No.
As part of our investigations, we came across a report from the National Intelligence Agency regarding the incident at Denton Bridge on the 22nd September 1996. Mr. Chairman, this document has already been admitted as evidence earlier this morning in a closed session with the commissioners. So it is now Exhibit 0048. I intend to read out the contents of the document and then pass it around to the commissioners in case you would like to look at it again. And thereafter, I will also give it to the witness to take a look. But just to save a bit of time, I'll start reading from it now and then ask you a couple of questions.
Okay.
So this document comes from the National Intelligence Agency, and it says, the caption at the top says, Case of Amadou Sanneh, UDP supporter / activities. Then the subheading says facts, and it reads, I'll read it exactly as it is in the document. On September 22nd, 1996, at about 2200 hours onwards at Denton Bridge Police Post, soldiers on routine posted at Denton Bridge Police Checkpoint apprehended Amadou Sanneh and handed him over to the police on duty, then thus Corporal Amadou Camara and Police Constable Tamsir Kijera. Amadou Sanneh was arrested together with several others on their welcoming of the UDP leader, Ousainou Dabo, from his provincial campaign tour. Findings. According to the investigative findings, it appears that these police officers were on duty at the checkpoint on the very day of the return of the main opposition contender from provincial tour. Whilst the supporter of UDP were jubilating the return of their leader in passing by vehicles through the post, the soldiers started checking and disembarking identified supporters of UDP, that is, those wearing UDP t-shirts, caps, and or waving UDP flags, amongst which were Amadou Sanneh, Sidia Sanyang, Bakary Dafe, Yankub Diba, and many others. However, most of the above named were released by the said soldiers whilst Amadou Sanneh's detention continued for more scrutiny. Nevertheless, the police officers were never told what he, in brackets Amadou Sanneh, has committed or intended. Subheading comments. As matters stand in this situation with regards to Amadou Sanneh's matter, there is no substantial basis to incriminate him. Since the soldiers who arrested him, an order for his detention could not be traced to confirm his deeds on this fateful September 22nd. Likewise, the police officers were also never told. In this regard, I am with the opinion that Amadou Sanneh have had enough during his arrest and detention periods that could serve enough to bring him back on course without making much noise again. It would not be wise enough to confront Amadou Sanneh with the arresting officers. Taking into consideration the political situation in the country and the security of the arresting officers, it would therefore be wise to detain Amadou Sanneh under the Security Detention Act. And at the bottom, it simply states investigation/interrogation. Do you have any observations in relation to what I have just read out?
I think the report is not factual in the sense that on 22nd I was not arrested. I was arrested on the 24th after we had taken our pictures and we had some slight treatment, but it just says that I've had enough to stay on course, which means that the brutality, the intimidation that they have meted out should keep me quiet and silent and not to be a problem to the APRC. That's the feeling. And I think that was the intent, to deal with the UDP so that they don't become a thorn in the flesh in the APRC government. That one, I think that's the point that is true. But the fact that they arrested us with the others, no. We were not arrested at Denton Bridge. They just did their brutality and let us go. All of us scattered. Then 24th, I was arrested.
And in fact, the point that you've just made is the one I wanted to highlight about how you understand enough has been meted out to him, something along those lines. And you've stated that very clearly.
Yes.
The report does, of course, confirm some of the details you've told us, which is on the 22nd of September, 96, as well as the time and the incident itself. So that's very clear.
Yes.
Before I move on to the next incident of victimization, I just wanted to ask how this particular incident, what impact it had on you and your family, as well as the UDP as a party, that one of its key members was arrested very early on, 24th September 1996, and detained for 18 days with no charge.
I think it just showed us the magnitude of the task that we were facing, that what we have put ourselves to challenge the APRC regime. I think it's an awakening that it won't be just politics in terms of a democratic change. This regime plans to use brute force against us, that we were aware. They plan to use all measures to stifle our planned operations in a democratic and a peaceful manner. So I think Denton Bridge was an awakening for the UDP, and we knew what we were going to face would not be an easy task. So at least for the UDP members, the core members, we stood up and we knew anything could happen under the AFPRC regime. It is let's say it's a government that just wants to establish itself by force. they'll use any means, the army, the police, the judiciary. That's another area. The legislature, we know, was at the wishes of the president. Now, all these were lessons that we learned, that UDP was not going to be spared any space. We had no democratic space. We just took on what we could at the time. So the other thing I wanted to add was the vehicle that was one of the vehicles, the democracy or the human rights, was also detained for over 2 months. The owner was going back and forth. They refused to release that vehicle. The owner was a colleague, friend Borijaite, and that's the one the tire was sought. So you just seize people's assets, you just seize their rights, no meetings, nothing. So that's the environment under which we operated, and we were prepared to face it.
Was your vehicle ever returned to you?
Yes. After my release, I collected my vehicle from them. It was all along parked with them. So it's like seizing somebody's assets for no reason. No violation, and then you just seize it by force.
You mentioned the judiciary as one of the instruments
Yes.
that you believe was used by the regime at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Following this Denton Bridge incident, do you recall if your party made any claims or brought the matter before the system, the legal system?
If I recall, we had press releases, or we had press conferences, and I believe we had engaged the authorities supposed to be, but these are the same people who brutalized us. So really, we did not expect any justice from these people. So even if you report your case, it will just be hanging in there.
So in essence, no measure was taken as a result of what happened to your party at Denton Bridge?
It may have been taken, but I cannot recall that. I cannot recall that.
You told us that Denton Bridge was an awakening for your party. Did it have an impact on your operations as an opposition party thereafter?
Yes, it had a major impact because for the ordinary electorate, it's a climate of fear. Because wearing UDP T-shirts, you can be brutalized by the security forces. This is not just to UDP, it's the general public. So people were very apprehensive. And with the network of informers that the former regime had, there were people being grabbed here and there and taken without any charge. Those cases exist. So really, it's like an oppressive measure which had its impact on the population, both UDP and non-UDP, in that they were all in a state of fear. Nobody could talk openly about the government. You know, you could not say what you want. The freedom of assembly was restricted. The press itself, I would call it, was driven into self-censorship. So they would hardly say anything critical of the government. Even if we had advertisements to make, sometimes it was very difficult to get some of the papers to publish it. or special radio stations for meetings. Sometimes they would deny us that access. So they created that environment in the country where you could hardly do your politics in a democratic and constitutional manner.
Thank you for that explanation. I would like to move on to the second incident of your victimization, what happened in 2000. Can you tell us about what happened to you in 2000?
2000, I was with the party leader and secretary general, and a lot of our executive members on tour. We arrived at Basse, and we were heading for Kulari. And then on the way out of Basse, the small hill, bushes around, we found boulders on the road, and the car that was in front, I remember, was from Basse, a native of Basse. I cannot remember the name, but if Ujari sounds right, it's a name, I don't remember. Somebody called from the bushes to say, Ujari, I spoke in Sarahule, as to ask for somebody. And I think he told him, no, that one is not here, it's in Basse. And then suddenly, from the bushes, boulders and stones came. The vehicle that the party leader was having, I was in the same vehicle in front with Dr. Cisse and others. The windscreen, one of the boulders hit it and smashed, although it did not break, it came down. So the driver took quick evasive actions and maneuvered out of range for this, from these boulders. Then our convoy, the youths, arrived on the scene, and they also felt the missiles coming at them. So they got down.
By missiles, you're referring to stones
and yes.
Please continue.
So they went down and followed these attackers into the bushes. It was really a bushy area. So you wouldn't know who went for who was fighting who, and so on. So, but we were pushed to safety in the car, and the youths went after them, and we know there were fightings in the bushes. And their vehicle, one of the vehicles used in the attack, we saw flames coming up. It was burned. So in the end, they came with, I think, about 3 attackers, one of them a woman. They had razor blades stuffed in around their waist. This was removed. I think some of them, they had cutlasses or so. So we were supposed to be butchered in that incident. The blades were supposed to cut us to pieces in the most gruesome maybe manner.
Are you making that assumption based on the cutlasses, or did you speak
with the blades stuffed? What would you use? A razor blade, So, but our youths caught these 3, and we took them back to Basse police station.
If I can just focus on these 3 individuals, who were they? Did you know who they were?
No, I don't know the names. I don't know these people. But we knew they were people prepared by the APRC group in Basse to do this ambush against us.
How do you know that?
Well, from the information that we got during our stay at the Basse police station.
You told us that a vehicle was burned.
Yes.
You saw a vehicle going up in flames.
Yes.
And it was the vehicle of the attackers.
Yes.
Do you know who burnt that vehicle?
No, as I said, it was a bushy area. You couldn't see the fighting. But these people were hidden in different ways. The circumstance and how it was burnt, I cannot say. We just saw the flames come up. So I wouldn't know how it was burnt.
But who do you believe burnt that vehicle?
Well, I would say in the fighting, it could have been burnt. By who, I wouldn't know exactly. If I say anything, it will just be a presumptuous idea to say this person or this group burnt it. But when you have a fight, and I would see the vehicle as a weapon used by the attackers. And if you have to defend yourself against the attackers, it could be a strategy that, we don't want them to maneuver and go and bring more attackers around or something, and then you react. It's possible. I don't have a correct answer for you to say this group did it or this person did it.
But you are saying that it is the group of one side, and the other side, meaning your side, could have been trying to defend themselves, and then
yes, in the process it could have been. I think it's in that context. It's a government vehicle, as it was stated the last session here. I agree. But then in this instance, it was being used as a weapon by the APRC attackers. So in the defense of ourselves, our own lives, if it got, it's seen as a lethal weapon in that case, and it's, destroyed. My little son tells me we do have all rights to defend ourselves, though.
Well, because this was the burning of a vehicle.
Yes.
Did anyone from your group, as far as you know, inquire as to what happened?
We had lots of discussions on what happened, but nobody claimed responsibility for burning this vehicle.
Apart from the vehicle that was burned, and the 3 people that were arrested from the other side, did anything else happen to anyone during that incident? At that point?
When we returned from Kulari to the station, we received information that one of the attackers was badly injured, and he was picked by a vehicle, I think UNHCR vehicle, I don't know, and taken to the hospital, or the clinic, Bashe clinic, where he died.
So just to make sure I understand it correctly, one of the individuals from the APRC side was injured severely during that incident between the APRC and the UDP, and he subsequently died.
Yes.
And again, do you know who injured him or who's responsible for his condition?
As I said, this is fighting in the bush. It's a mini forest. They were inside, and we couldn't see who was beating who was holding who, or who was throwing stones at who. But this person, I think with his injuries, maybe would have hidden himself and came out after everyone left this area. So this vehicle found him staggering maybe on the road and then carried him to the clinic.
As far as you know, did any member of your party's leadership inquire from the youths of your group what happened or who's responsible for that?
As I said, we had a series of discussions, but nobody claimed to be the one to have inflicted any wound on him. And the environment was such that it was not visible. The fighting was inside the bushes, so you wouldn't say A and B are fighting, C and D are fighting, no. At the end of the day, they caught, the three that they caught were subdued, and they were brought to the streets where we were parked. And, as the party leader had said, don't touch them, don't beat them, or so on. We removed the blades, the weapons that they had, and we took them with the weapons to the police station.
Can you tell us which police station did you go to?
This is Basse Police Station.
Can you tell us what happened at Basse Police Station?
After our return from Kulari, we were detained in a way. We couldn't leave, and because of the death of this person, they were doing their own investigations, and along the way, we had a team from Banjul, led by J. So and Bojang and so on. I don't know all of them. They came to follow up those investigations.
When you say a team, where did that team come from? What institution?
From Banjul Police Headquarters, I believe.
So to make sure I understand, your group caught 3 attackers and took them to Basse Police Station?
Yes.
Upon arrival at Basse Police Station, were you detained at that moment, or were you detained after that? Meaning after leaving the station and carrying on?
I think we went to Kulari, and then later we were escorted back, and we were virtually detained at the station. So
with the 3 attackers?
With the attackers.
Can you give us an idea of roughly how many people were in your group when you were detained at Basse Police Station?
Actually, the tour had a big team, so many vehicles. Actually, the station, we were camped more outside, behind the station, the open area. We used to call ourselves Kulari refugees, because we were just camped down, in the open area. This was the beginning of the rainy season. Sometimes, we'll be under that light rain. So it's quite a crowd, I would say, because at the end about 80 to 100 of us were charged out of that crowd. Some were, excluded from the list.
And what were you charged with, this 80 to 100?
I think we are charged with the mother of this person. I think it's one is it Alaji Njai or Ali Njai, who lost his life in this incident.
Let's still focus on Basse Police Station. How long were you detained at the police station?
I wouldn't know exactly, but it lasted for a while.
Was it a matter of days or a matter of weeks?
Well, I would say it's more than a week, I believe. I wouldn't be able to say exactly that, but about more than a week. There.
So you told us a little bit about the conditions. You were camped out in the open area. Can you tell us a little bit about what the conditions were like during that 1 week plus in terms of food and
actually they were not giving us food. We had the benevolence of Munanjai and his brother. They were giving us adequate food at the station, bringing food daily. We would even give some to other inmates who were there. So really, we are very grateful to them. That's the family of late Alhaji Muhammad Musanjai. They did help a lot during that period. But the police did not give us any food. The facilities, sanitary facilities was awful. And you can
Sorry?
the sanitary facilities. They were in very terrible state. And you can imagine with a big crowd, the extent of the pressure on the use of those facilities, it was just terrible. So you did your best to avoid using them. Then during that period, the three that we caught were released, and we were instead detained and accused of murder. And that's the time when Baba Job was coming, I think with about 6 double cabin pickups full of his APRC youths, circling the police station. They said they want to avenge the death of this Mr. Njai on one of the UDPs. So it's like we were taken hostage in the station like that, and he was coming in and out, almost like the commander of the security forces there, giving instructions and really behaving in a very, very, very brute way towards us.
Just a couple of questions. What kind of instructions was he giving at the time?
It's like the little facilities that the station officer was according to us. He would say, no, that should not have been given to us. I think he was one of those who also protested on the use of the telephone and the fact that we were in the office of the station officer. And when the team came from Banjul, JSO and others, he was even doing also worse. I can remember the late Abu Karamba Gassama, who got very angry and he was insulting JSO, his mother, and was crying that day. He was really furious at the way we were being treated. And really, I think from that day on, JSO tried to distance himself from us then.
Just so that the record is clear, at that time in 2000, who was Baba Job?
He was an APRC strongman. What role his title in the party, I wouldn't say, but he was one of the leaderships in the APRC.
And from what you've said, someone who was a member of the APRC, a political party, was giving instructions to the security forces, the police officers.
Police on the ground.
And were his instructions being complied with?
Yes.
You also mentioned a JSO from the police. Do you recall what his title was at the time?
No, I'm not sure about the title. Then I wouldn't be able to give you that.
Does he have any other name apart from JSO?
I'm not sure. I'm not.
So you were at the Basse police station for just over a week or thereabouts?
I believe yes. Some days, yes.
Do you recall how long after your arrival at Basse police station you were charged with the murder of this Mr. Aliwo Alajindai?
I think it took quite a while after the arrival of this team from Banjul, led by JSO. I think they brought in something that we were going to take cautionary statements.
All 80 of you, 80 to 100 of you?
Yes, I think that's the time we knew what they were planning was to charge us with the murder of Aliou Njai.
And this is important in terms of the time frame. Do you recall if it was at the beginning of your detention or towards the end of the first week?
This is towards the tail end.
Okay.
Yeah.
So quite a number of days had passed.
Quite a number of days. Yes.
More than 3 days or 4 days?
I think so, more than that.
And so when this team came from Banjul and then you realized that you were going to be charged with the murder of this gentleman. Can you tell us what happened from there?
Then they said we were going to face the courts, the magistrates' courts, and we confirmed that Boriture was the one who was the magistrate, Basse. I had to go and verify the facts that he was there, because I think our party leader and the executive, they are worried that they can take us to any kangaroo court and say, oh, these are the criminals, and they'll just met out any sentence to us. So, but we confirmed that Boriture was the magistrate.
Why did you think that was a possibility, that you would be put before essentially a false or fake court, from what you've said? Had that happened before?
Well, we knew what the APRC was capable of, and we knew who we were dealing with. So nothing is beyond them.
So you felt like that was one of the tactics?
It was
that
a
could be
possibility.
used?
It was a possibility.
So and you were asked to confirm if it was
Yes.
Boriture? Why were
I
you
left the
asked?
station to go to find out at the courthouse, but Bori was there. Then I went to his residence, and I found him there. He said, yes, I'll be sitting. So when I came back, I confirmed that, and we agreed to go.
So you were allowed to go, were you on your own or were you escorted?
Well, I was escorted with a vehicle. We were,
By police officers, is
yeah,
that
there
correct?
was a police officer.
So what happened when you appeared before then Magistrate Boriture?
Yes, when we appeared there, I think to the legal process, I think Bori ruled that I think the case was beyond the jurisdiction of the magistrate. So he transferred it to the Banjul High Court, and to the fury of the APRC team, because during the time Baba Job and his team were circling, what they were saying was we were going to go to Janjambre, we were going to be remanded there. And, so the fact that the ruling was to send us to Banjul, to the High Court, where we had been communicating with our team on the ground in Banjul, who arranged the bail proceedings for us. So the APRC team were furious, and so we were loaded on the back of a truck, of this truck.
How did Mr. Baba Job react?
No, they just were angry at the decision and left somehow. And they expected the magistrate to send us to Janjambre prison.
So following this ruling, you were transferred to Banjul. So from Basse to Banjul, is that correct?
Basse to Banjul in a truck on the rain. So we came all the way.
Is that to say that there was no tarpaulin cover on the truck?
There was no cover on the truck. We were seated down. And no cover from the rain, nothing.
Can you tell us what happened upon arrival at Banjul?
Upon arrival, we were at the police station, and then we stayed there overnight, then to the High Court, where we were granted bail, and then the case started. The murder charges, going to attend the proceedings. So gradually the numbers were reduced until the last 5.
So from about 80 to 100 people, gradually reduced until about 5 accused persons remained.
Okay.
Do you recall who these 5 were? Or do you recall any of them?
Yes, some of them, I think, they had Single Nyasi, Lamaron, Rawan Seka, and I wouldn't remember all of them now. But these 5 were also later discharged.
What about Mr. Usainu Dabo? Was he part of
Yes,
that?
I think he was part of the...
So eventually they were discharged, the case was over.
Yes.
So this was your second incident of being arrested and detained. Can you tell us how that felt in relation to your ability to carry out your activities? Did that affect your own activities in any way, having been arrested and detained a second time?
I think the level of commitment of the core UDP membership was very high. The UDP cause was not for individuals. I could have just continued with my private practice and forgotten about politics. The same thing for Mr. Dabo. He could have continued with his legal firm. There are other professionals, Amadou, Ibu Mane, and others who supported. But the commitment was to get Gambia out of the nightmare that we were in, perpetrated by the AFPRC, APRC regime. This is our country, we all belong to it. I think we all have a role to play. You can say I'm not a politician, but what politicians do affect your life. It affects your market, it affects your schools, your taxes, your health institutions, and everything. So to say that, oh, I'm not interested in politics, is just, I think, a layman's expression. You don't know what politics does to you. So we believe that this regime, dictatorial regime, was destroying this country, and for our kids, for the Gambian public, future generations, we had to stand up against this regime. So Basse was the second ambush. Denton Bridge was one, then we had Basse. We knew that we were up against a monster. So we have that at the back of our mind, that anything could happen. But the commitment was strong, and it did not dissuade us from continuing our politics.
So as you know, the Commission is focused on human rights violations and abuses that were conducted during that period. One of the things that you mentioned is the nightmare and the dictatorial regime that the AFPRC had instilled.
Yes.
Do you have any examples of any of those incidents in relation to members of your party?
So many had been arrested without charge. So many have been detained without any valid reasons. The 72 hours detention period was never respected. They kept you as long as they wanted. They don't allow you legal counsel. So really, it is all over the country's, the sphere of administration in the country. Some of our supporters being sacked from their jobs without any reason, just for being a supporter. I think this country went through, that's why I'll say it went through a nightmare. Really, most people wouldn't know the extent. But today, I think through this and the other commissions, a lot of the hidden facts come out. I think those who have no knowledge of this, today if they see what was happening, maybe they would have thought something different during this period. And probably more Gambians would have stood up to challenge this regime and get this country out of the nightmare that we had gone through.
Now, as a result of what you describe as a nightmare, did members of your party, the UDP, did many of them still remain in the country, or did they leave?
Some had to leave. A lot of people who feared for their lives, and rightly so, had to leave. Some were refugees in other countries. I wouldn't want to make names, but we have so many of our party members, some in the US, some in Europe, trying to run away from the system, which is really brutal, and they really fear, and genuinely, I believe, for their lives. So a lot of people had to leave.
And in a way, this takes us into the third incident of your victimization. I see that we have about 6 minutes, so maybe I'll just let you tell us a bit about that, and then we'll continue after the break. Can you tell us what happened in 2013 that led to your arrest?
In 2013, I think late sometime, is it maybe September, I don't remember the exact date, but two NIA operatives came to my office and said they wanted to see me at their offices again. So from my first experience, I knew what they were capable of doing. So I contacted my wife, my office staff, tell them, look, this is what is happening. So again, they did not disappoint me. When I went, the same routine: empty your pockets, take off your shoes, your glasses, and just say, put him in the cell. This time it was not more of a cell, but the hall at the entrance, I was there with some
NIA
others.
Premises,
NIA premises.
In Banjul.
Yes, so I was there with others, people who were there. So they just put me in there. After a while, their operatives, they took me, I think, late Sukuta, is it Sukuta Jamne or so back? I don't remember the name fully, but Sukuta something. He took me for questioning and interview. Said you wrote a letter for Malam Fati, who was apprehended with the letter, and you were tarnishing the image of this government and so on. Say what? This is what we believe is true, not a question of tarnishing the image of this government, the brute force that is being used. So he said, yes, but I have also been detained and arrested, but you don't have to go to this lane and write these letters. I said, yes, I was detained for a long time, but now I am back in the system, you see, and so on. So that's
Can you
where
tell us about the context of the letter? What was the purpose of that letter?
the letter was an attestation for those who felt threatened. They felt that their lives could be in danger through this regime's activities. And so we write a letter of support to say that wherever they go, we don't know where they want to go, let the authorities help them and provide them safe abode or something like that. So sometimes they state what problems they have, just put it simply, to help them out.
So essentially it was an affidavit, an attestation to support an asylum application.
Yes, it is.
So this was the second time that you were detained at the NIA premises.
Yes.
But it was in fact your third detention during that period. And essentially, you could leave your house and not know if you were going to be arrested or if you would return home that day.
That was true for all the opposition, but mainly the UDP. I can recall a case of one in Kafuta. I forgot the exact name. He's one of our chairmen there. He was just picked up from his home. This time it's not going, and taken to the NIA, and then ended up at Mile 2 prison with us. And when I asked, he said, all they asked me was, you are the one who cooks Benachin for Hussein Dabo and his team when they come to Kafuta. I said, yes. You are the one who hosts him. Yes. So that's why they took him. And he was in Mile 2 with us. He was somebody with a condition, I think hypertensive, really painful. Not taken to a court, not charged. You know, these are people you can take Gambians and just dump them in prison without any reason. And there are others we found there. C.D. Jaiten, the current MD of Gamtel, was an inmate with us. He was not charged. They never told him what he did. And he spent years. You know, we found him there. Years in prison. For what reason? He was never told. This is the regime that we fought for. This is what APRC represented.
Thank you very much for that, Mr. Sanneh. I will defer to the chairman to take a break, but when we come back, we will get into the details of your arrest in or around September 2013. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I will stop and then resume after the break. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairman Council, and thank you, Mr. Sanneh. We will take a 1 hour break and come back at 2:30. Meeting is adjourned.